Hi, I'm Miss Andrea.
And I'm Miss Mare.
And this is CheesePress. And we're a little moody today.
We are very moody today.
It's a new year, and it's a different kind of year. Things are going wild in homeschool land. The economy's crap. Homeschool programs have low enrollment. And a lot of new parents are in the homeschool message boards asking a lot of questions.
Are we going to talk at all about why there's such low enrollment? Before we dive into our unpopular opinion.
I've been writing articles on this, and I'll have to do the links.
Right.
My articles are on medium.com and my LinkedIn.
Right.
We've talked about this. So 2 years ago, Mira and I went to a conference. We came back and we talked about the conference. And she was excited, and I was like, nah, that's not good. So what happened was a lot of people realized that homeschooling was more than a fringe activity done by bored housewives.
Yep. And they saw it as an opportunity to make money.
A lot of men who had a lot of money looked at homeschooling, buzzed around, and came back last year with opportunities for people who hadn't even considered homeschooling and for teachers who may have been disgruntled to break into the homeschool market. And that means they basically started homeschool franchises.
It's like the Lulu Rove homeschool.
There's at least 4 of them.
Yeah.
There's at least 4 companies telling thousands of women that you too can be a homeschool founder. Founder means you're starting a program.
Right.
And people are going to come to you and homeschool.
To put a pod in every cul-de-sac.
Yes, a pod in every cul-de-sac means within your neighborhood, where there are 4 or 5 cul-de-sacs usually. That means there's 5 homeschool teachers in that neighborhood, and little Timmy and little Julie just have to go across the street to the homeschool person, so mom and dad don't have to think. There's always someone in your neighborhood to watch and teach your kids, even if you two can't homeschool. So what they're basically doing is creating neighborhood private schools. And they're promising these people they're going to make $8,000.
Right. A month.
They're not going to make. No. This is a service. This is a, I can't think of the word. I want to say mission. That's not it. This is a calling.
Yeah.
This is a calling.
You're not going to make money running a homeschool co-op.
You're not.
And actually, when we get to our unpopular opinions, we're going to talk about one of the reasons why that's a wild idea from the get-go. Because that is one of the things that we have on the list of stuff to address.
Right. And so there are going to be opinions that homeschoolers don't like. There may be opinions that people who don't like homeschoolers don't like. I like being in the middle. So here we are. All right, you ready?
So our goal today is to make some of everybody angry at some point, yeah? Very often we see on homeschool message boards, a family says, school's not working for my kid. I'm going to pull him out. What do I do?
And someone says, de-school them.
Every time. Let's talk about what de-schooling is.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is de-schooling, man?
So de-schooling is we are going to take the next 3 to 6 months and we are going to not do educational pursuits.
Almost swore. Not do a darn thing.
We're going to just get to know each other, get to know our learning styles, figure out where we want to go from here. We're just going to take some time off to relax, decompress, and begin the educational journey anew.
In all fairness, I started homeschooling a 2nd and 4th grader who had experienced some racial trauma in the schools. I didn't de-school them, but it wouldn't have hurt to do that, to give them that break. We did spend the summer before we started doing some very intentional things, relaxing, having as much fun as humanly possible. And I made sure that first year of homeschool was as spontaneous as it could be and relaxed as it could be. But I find deschooling to be dangerous, especially after a certain grade.
Right. So I will say we were third grade. It was October. That first year, I won't say that we were super academically rigorous, but we did dive straight into academic pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
Like we left traditional schooling one day and the next week we were at Science Olympiad.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really take the full time off, but we did kind of do light free education. Free and, free.
You went to the Heritage Center, you did some classes here, you did some classes there.
Well, that's what we started the next year.
Into socialization / academic
We
pursuits.
did. We absolutely did. But that was kind of the next year before I realized that the Environmental Heritage Center was teaching science labs that I could take my kids to, and they could get lab classes, stuff like that. No, that first year was just sort of, I have friends and they're all homeschooling at this co-op over here and they do Science Olympiad, and okay, we're going to go straight into that. And so you're just going to be studying some science this year, and we'll figure out the rest as we get to it. So it was definitely a lighter, more relaxed approach because we started mid-school year, and just it was a very sudden thing. It was not something that we had planned by any stretch of the imagination. So
we spent a full year feeling it out.
Right.
We went into time for learning, which is great for kids of that age. Older kids think it's babyish. My daughter, if you say time for learning to her, she rolls her eyes because she got to a point where she was like anything but this, because she had reached a point of maturity. And it's all animated and she didn't want that. But we spent the year, Friday field trips always. We were always in a museum or something, history in bed, because I was very sick that year. And so I just take the history book, climb in, we get in, and we did everything, just kind of how we teach now. We did everything from the viewpoint of history. This is where we're going to learn our vocabulary. This is where everything. And we did that in math, and we just kind of kept it relaxed. But to stop, because the idea of deschooling is to stop.
So that you can have a reset.
So that you can get schoolish things out of your system. Why?
Because we're embracing this new magical world of homeschooling where anything is possible.
Anything's possible if you study regularly. Everything is possible if you study regularly. Like, for real. Like, I know it seems funny and it seems a little crazy, and I seem very Tiger Mom. I admire Tiger Mom so much. But when you stop cold turkey and you've got kids who are already in the habit of getting an assignment, doing the assignment, and turning it in, I have never seen a kid come out of school with good habits, take a year off, and ever go back. And I'm old, y'all. I've been doing this.
Yeah.
Never seen them regain that personal discipline and structure. So if you're going to take a year off because your kid is stressed, what's wrong with doing something like stringent for 2 hours a day?
Right.
And take the rest of the hours off. Don't stop. Don't break good habits.
So the unpopular opinion is deschooling
Sucks.
Yes, but it throws the baby out with the bathwater. You lose some good things along the way that are going to be helpful in your homeschool journey. Things that you need. And so don't do that.
I'm not saying don't do it.
Do it carefully.
Don't do it too long. Because I see people deschool for 2 years. And then go, oh, well, guess we're unschoolers now. And he doesn't want to do math, so I guess we're not doing math, so I guess he's not going to college. He wants to be an engineer. Legos aren't enough. No! Legos are not. Okay. No.
I kind of feel like that's a natural segue into something that is not at the top of my list here. So in this thread of what are some cons of homeschooling, like, hey, we know, we're probably doing this homeschooling thing. We know all of the pros, but we want to be fully prepared to tell us the bad side of things too, so that we can actually prepare and try and avoid the most common pitfalls. So that was the request on Reddit. And so this response from Terrible Town 1416. Pros. You have complete control over what they get to learn. You have complete control over their social life. They can now compete for parental attention in exciting new ways. They'll make friends with adults more easily than kids their own age. They don't need advanced math or science in real life. There are more opportunities to instill religious values. You can control their exposure to comprehensive sex health and avoid the subject entirely. It's easier to handle their mental health the way your family chooses, and you can make anything a class and rack in those credits needed to graduate. And it's followed with, oh wait, that's my list of cons as someone who was homeschooled from 4th grade to high school.
Okay. Yeah, nah. So that hit weird. So in Reddit world and in Reddit homeschool world, there's a segment of homeschool survivors, people who had homeschooled who did not have a good time, mostly because their parents did their job. And so they'll wander into homeschool land and throw a wrench in, just throw in a Molotov to pull up conversation. But these conversations are needed. These conversations are needed. And they're needed to have in great detail. Because if you start reading them, you'll start seeing where the cracks start to form. And if cracks are starting to form in you, you'll recognize them and pivot and pull back. The overall pattern from watching and being in and around homeschooling for 20 years, 25 years, is that it always starts off really good. Whether you do online with animation, whether you do any of the Reader Rabbits or the little programs designed to teach them how to read, whether you unschool, I feel like you really can't go wrong up until the end of 5th grade unless you don't teach your child responsibility. So every homeschool method works through elementary, just as long as you teach the children the responsibility of, this is for your betterment, I'm going to give you an assignment, let me see what you can do, give it back to me. And don't let them say, well, I don't want to do it, and pitch a fit, and you go, okay, fine.
So that actually is another point that's somewhere else in this thread. That was, if you are taking a child from traditional schooling because of some kind of discipline problem, you're not going to solve that by homeschooling.
Nope.
Because in traditional school, the child is, I don't want to unload the dishwasher. In homeschool, the child is, I don't want to do math.
And they don't.
And they don't.
And their parents give in eventually.
They're like, things I'm not going to do is fight you.
And fellow homeschoolers tell them to leave them alone. I've told a lot of parents to leave their kids alone.
Right.
I had a parent this summer and their child call me thanking me because they were graduating and getting into college. And mom was like, no, you don't understand how many walls you talked me down from at the time you told me to leave the child alone when it came to their writing. And the child was like, really? She told you that? The full story is the child was writing for 4 or 5 different reasons. And I was like, oh, this could be one.
You can streamline that.
This. Back up.
This writing example.
Do not kill the baby.
This writing example, if you're writing for speech competitions and language arts and history, there's crossover here, and it can be a single piece of writing. As long as we're writing, we're good.
I'm known to take a history essay and fact check it, and that's the history grade, and then grammar check it, and that's the language arts grade. So I'm not all about being like military homeschool, but I'm about, if we roll back to nothing, we have nowhere to go but down.
Right.
Okay, redirect me, because the brain is squirrel.
There's a whole big thing in homeschooling, and if you want to trigger any homeschooler, just bring up the word socialization, and everybody's going to be very defensive, because the way that that's phrased from the average person is really a straw man kind of argument.
Children don't actually socialize in school.
Right.
They are socialized. And what that means is, for example, you have kids in a classroom. You have a far Republican over here, a far liberal over here. These are their parents, because what are kids, right? And then you have some moderates here. And just from those kids being around each other and seeing no danger between each other and sharing some ideas, the kids on the fringe start to move in. That's socialization.
Right.
So that's what socialization means. Because when you're in school and the teacher's getting ready to talk and everyone's socializing, the teacher says, you're not here to socialize.
Right. But that's the way that it's often discussed, though, right? About the ability to make friends. Well, homeschoolers are awkward and they can't make friends. And there are absolutely people in this thread, former homeschoolers, who are like, I got out into the real world and I had no idea how to talk to somebody my age. I grew up talking to adults. So then that does come to this other point that was made over here, that, I was always praised for interacting with adults. And I didn't really have the opportunities to interact with my peers. And what happened in the context of that is that allowed an older man at my church to prey upon me, because I was trained that speaking friendly with adults was...
I wish you hadn't read this to me earlier, because my face isn't doing...
Your face is not doing what it did when I mentioned it earlier.
When you read it to me.
It is not.
Because I grew up in church in the 1980s, and nobody was homeschooling. And the older men in church still preyed upon the girls. So while you feel that you were taught things that made it easy for an older man in church to prey upon you, he was going to try. One way or another.
Yeah.
I don't want to discredit what she believes happens to her.
Right.
Because there may have been some truth in it. I'm guessing this is an older millennial. Kids and my children's, whatever, younger millennial, zennial.
Right.
They were the kids that were told, you don't got to hug auntie.
Right.
You don't got to kiss uncle. You don't want to pick you up, tell them don't pick you up.
Right.
And so that generation of kids were told boundaries.
Right.
And so that, I'm not saying that homeschooling didn't have some play in that, because that may have been the way that that generation raised their kids to be super compliant. But I know I'm older than that person. And those men at church were creepy.
So we had a discussion this week about the rules.
And I'm religious, don't get me wrong.
Right. But the rules that you had in your house, because there is a tendency in the homeschool community, especially in families that have lots of kids. So when you are in a family of 4 or 5 or more kids, a lot of times what happens when you're homeschooling, and this can be magical, is the older kids start helping their younger siblings. The reason I say that can be magical is because what happens is the older kids are reinforcing what they already know, because the way that education works, you learn something, you repeat something back and then you have to teach it to somebody else. And if you can't teach it to somebody else, you don't actually understand it.
There's something magical about having older siblings. Debbie helped me tie my shoes. Judy helped me read. I don't remember what Joyce helped me do. I'm sure there were things.
So, but that being said, the flip side to that, especially with people who are not in that family dynamic, might look at the younger siblings and believe, maybe correctly, maybe not, but believe that nobody's
watching. If mom's got
watching.
10 kids, she gets comfortable with parenthood.
Right.
Because my parents had 9 kids. And I saw them get comfortable with parenthood. My mother got comfortable. My daddy did not get comfortable. My daddy was not playing with nobody. Nobody.
But so what does that mean? To get comfortable with parenthood, what does that mean?
It means,
in practical terms.
like, so that first baby, you bubble wrap them. The second one, they might fall off the bed and hit their head and you just grab them and pick them back up. The third one, you look and see if they're going to get up on their own. Like, you get comfortable.
Right.
You're not so scared about breaking them.
You're not
not so scared about leaving them to their own devices.
Right.
But if you go too far in that, then other people will be like, what's going on over here? Ain't nobody watching. That kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
So these are some rules.
So we had a conversation the other day, and I'm not going to discuss the conversation because it's someone else's private business.
Right.
But based on that conversation, I gave my personal rules that I had in my household. My husband and I raised a boy and a girl who were pretty close in age, exactly 2 years apart. And based on my upbringing of growing up in a house with 11 people total, sometimes more, depending on fostering or cousins or whatever thing like that, these are the rules that I ended up making for my family. 1, trust no one. No one. Just mom and daddy. Period. I don't care about your aunties. I don't care about your uncles. I don't care about your I don't care about your grandparents. Trust no one. Mom and daddy. 2, if we're having house guests, I guess the kids will be in my bed tonight. King size bed always. We also had a sofa in the room. But if they're house guests, if they're visitors, then mom and dad are having a sleepover. Let's go. It's bedtime. Let's go. And if someone gets mad, that's a personal problem. They're not invited back. If you have a problem that my kids are sleeping in my bed and not in their room with you next door,
that's a red flag.
And I don't care who you are, you're not coming back. Okay. Make sure one of your kids is a tattletale. Find a snitch. There's a snitch in there somewhere. Find a snitchy kid and be like, okay, you are the lookout. You don't let nobody touch your siblings. You don't let nobody look at your siblings funny. You don't let nobody hit your siblings. You tell me if someone so much as tickles your sibling. I need to know. You need to know if someone so much just looks at your kids funny. And my son did that. We had hired a babysitter. We had several babysitters when we lived in New Orleans. And New Orleans, right? You go out and you have fun. So there was a lady next door who had a son in boarding school. And she volunteered her son to babysit our kids. Best babysitter I ever had.
Really?
Yep. Because she was next door.
Got it.
She would let him a half hour and then she would come and stay. So that lady was watching my kids and she was magnificent.
No, those were the best babysitters when it was like a teenager, but then also the parents were involved.
Yeah.
Like they might not have been in the room at all times.
My mom would make her way over. Mom would make her way over.
But no, the best babysitters were, okay, we're paying the teenager, but the parents are around.
But the young mother, I walked in and Jackson said, she's not coming back. I said, why? He says, she hit my sister.
Oh.
Done. Right? And then, so I didn't get a babysitter for a while, and Jackson said, y'all should go out and have fun. And so his kindergarten teacher ended up watching them. Like, let one of your kiddos be the snitch. Find out who your protective child is. And let them tattle. Kids don't need to hug or kiss. I'm going to use the bad grammar. Kids don't need to hug or kiss nobody if they don't want to.
Right.
And I have a nephew who I always wanted a hug from. And he'd see me coming, he'd look at me, and he could Spider-Man a door. He would climb the open door. Like the closet door would be open, and so there was that triangle at the top.
Right.
He would scurry the door and sit in that triangle up there and just look at me. And I was like, see you next time. Because no child should ever have to show affection. And I loved this kid. He hugs me all the time now. He is 31.
I can see my youngest child doing that now. Because he's not a huge fan of physical contact. I can see him
if he so much
Spider-Man
as sees me, I get a hug.
Nice.
He's 31.
Right.
He is not 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
Right? Never let anyone force affection onto your child. Not because you don't trust your siblings, your sister-in-law, your aunt, your pastor, your parents, but because that sends a child a message that adults have a right to hug them, whether they are feeling it or not. And when they lose autonomy to their body,
that's when things happen.
5, no sleepovers. My kids had one sleepover, and my son said, that boy asked my sister to take off her swimsuit. And I was like, and scene.
And scene.
She didn't have no sleepovers without Jackson. And there were only like 2 of those.
Right.
Remember, large families are always a target. I had 8 siblings, and I have seen everything. I've seen it all. The larger the family, the more likely someone's going to come in and want to play auntie.
Yeah.